Hello, greetings. This is the presidential hustings debate, and this is GTV that we're broadcasting off. My name is Johnny Dolan, and I will be chairing the debate. As a brief format for the rules, we're first going to have a 60-second introduction from each of the candidates, explaining who they are and why they're here. And then we're going to have a series of pre-submitted questions. Each candidate will get 90 seconds to give their answer to the question. And after all candidates have given an answer to that question, we'll have each candidate will have one chance to challenge one other candidate for that question, and then we'll repeat that process and end. So let's get started, I guess. George, would you like to begin by introducing yourself?
That's fine. Hi, I'm Curious George, and I'm going to be your next Guild President. So I'm just going to quickly tell you about the manifesto points I have, the main ones anyway. So firstly, the Guild of Students is there for students, so therefore we should put it on events that students want. The way I'd like to do this is to survey all students, find out what events they want, and the most popular ones we will put them on for them. Also, I'd like to see to advertise society events even better, probably through the use of a Guild app, which is more interactive to students, and see what events we can get on there. My second manifesto point is to make this building a centre of raising awareness on liberation, local and national issues. I think the Guild of Students is a fantastic opportunity to be part of the education of students here. I was one of those who have benefited from learning about liberation issues and other issues because of the Guild of Students itself. And my third manifesto point is a review of the library loan system during the holidays. I want to try and make it easier for students and fairer on students so that high postage costs can be avoided. My final point is that we should not be waiting for students to come and engage with us. I want to see an officer team out there engaging with students, and it should be us that are actively going out there and finding students, not waiting for them to come to us.
Thanks a lot. Ben?
Hi, I'm Benjamin Pirate Pooster. Look at me. I want to be popular. I want to be your friend in order to make up for my innate uselessness. Vote for me, because I have a big earnest grin which will soon vanish when the management crush me under the weight of their misery and paperwork. I only care about policy. That's why, if elected, I will personally fill the soap dispensers with jam so you can have a nice snack after you've taken a dump. I want live music, alternative music nights, live events, arcade machines, karaoke nights, FOIA extenuating circumstances in university departments, a stress programme for PhD students, for our student debt not to be privatised, for the university to piss off with its ideas of putting fees up to 16k, a referendum on the NUS membership, a referendum on what shops we have, and a jukebox in Joe's. If elected, when it turns out I can't enact any of these policies because the management don't like them, I pledge to make the Guild explain to you in explicit and excruciating detail precisely why it hasn't done so. I also want to end this bullshit culture, the smarmy, sanctimonious, faux, cheerful garbage that makes an election look like we're trying a new brand of Coke. Bollocks to this, vote for me.
Thank you. We can hold clapping until perhaps the end of the whole show, so we can have even more time for questions and democracy. So, Max, your 60 seconds.
My name is Maximilian A. Shapiro, and I'm standing to be your president because I really hate this guild. I think it is sanctimonious and self-indulgent. I'm not a career guilder. I came into this university, joined the RA scheme so that I could help my residents. In fact, that's what I found there. But I also found the Guild Council, and it was the single most boring, tedious, and absolutely pointless thing I ever had the displeasure to sit through. Why vote for me for president? Because I think we should return this guild to what it's actually meant to do: represent students to its university and provide services for them to enjoy. There would be, under my tenure, a larger emphasis on societies, on the ability of students to make free choice about what they want to do, and about making sure that students are actively engaged, not with the university, not with guild politics, but with other people that they want to engage with. The guild should be about society's representation and not about Westminster wannabes.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. All right, Poppy.
Hi, I'm Poppy. Yes, I'm rerunning to be president of the Guild. Firstly, I'd like to see a reform of guild politics, and I don't mean this in an arbitrary reform of the current system that we've got. I want this to be a system that's based on the research and what students have actually said. I truly believe that decision-making should be accessible to all students and not just a small minority. I'd like to see improved academic support for international students, particularly with regards to exam irregularities and plagiarism. I want to see the Guild to be serious about its commitment to the living wage for student staff. We've had it as a belief and commitment for about 2 years now, and I think that this can be done through negotiations with the university around our block grant and our compact process. And I'd also like to see more study spaces on campus. There's a lot of misused space, and I know that around exam time this is particularly contentious for students. And I'd also like to see more big campus events. similar to things like Veil Fireworks and Explosion. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. Ed?
Hi, my name's Edward Sainsbury and I'm running to be your Guild President. The Guild isn't perfect and there's a lot more that can be done. First of all, I think it's quite key that we recognise that the Guild has 3 key roles. It's a political union, it's also a social space for students at this university, and it's also a space for students to come for welfare and advice. I think it's really important that we engage with students constructively and we get them on side. I don't want to run the Guild, I want to be part of the Guild with students from this university and make sure that we're putting pressure on the university when it's necessary. For example, with my policy about the block grant, getting a decent amount of money so that we can actually run all the services in the Guild, support societies effectively so that they can actually work well for students. I also want to communicate better with students. People say this every year. I actually want to go and talk to students face to face. Yes, we can sort out the website. I want to do that. I want to make sure it works for students, but we also need to go and talk to them face to face directly in their halls, in their houses, go to them, because if they're not coming to us, then we need to do something about that. We can't stay in the Guild and pretend that everyone's going to start coming to us if we have policies about communication.
Brilliant,
but we
thanks a
actually
lot.
need to do it.
Thanks a lot. Okay, so let's get on with the first pre-submitted question. So Ben, you'll be starting this, and we'll be moving along the panel with George last. So the first question is, the landscape of higher education has changed dramatically over the last 3 years. Do your policies address the most pressing concerns of students paying £9,000 a year? Ben.
Thank you. I'm not actually going to answer this question. I'm going to reel off some buzzwords while sounding really earnest. Change, student experience, engagement, democracy, having your say, having a great time, value, getting the most, your Guild, development, fun.
Is that over?
No, not done yet.
Okay.
Okay, I'm done.
Thanks. Thank you, Ben. So, Max, do you remember the question?
Yes.
Okay. Brilliant. Go ahead.
Thoroughly entertaining as that was. I have to straight out answer, straight shooter. No, my policies do not address the £9,000 fees because it is not the Guild President's place to address the £9,000 fees. President of the Guild represents students to the university. University wants money. It wants more money, which is why they're trying for £16,000. Obviously, I don't want to pay more for university. I don't want anyone else to pay more for university. It would be the stated position of the Guild that we are against £9,000 fees. We're against more fees. We'd like free university. I would like free food. I'm very hungry at the moment. The point is, the Students' Union is actually about, yes, stating our point, representing ourselves to the university, but we've got more important things to address day to day. If you have problems with the £9,000 fees, which I do, address your MP, lobby Parliament. We could try to do this as a Guild, but there's only so much we can do. As such, I can't say that my policies address the £9,000 fees. They address more important things, and also things that are within our remit as a Guild. Look, I'm not here to be part of the Guild. I'm here to run the Guild and make sure it runs efficiently, and make sure that things actually get done and the people have as least fuss possible when they try to join a society, when they want to have fun, when they want to go to an event. So we don't have to beat around the bush with political questions, especially political questions that have obvious answers. Do we want to pay more for university? No. It's that simple. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Poppy?
Yeah, I think probably a big failing actually by the government when they chose to put tuition fees up to £9,000 was that they didn't fully explain to students why their fees were going up from £3,000 to £9,000. And I think students know that they're paying £9,000 now, but they don't know that that's because HEFCE funding was cut and that actually it was always £9,000, but HEFCE previously had subsidised that, so students had to pay £3,000. And I don't think the argument that students now are paying more, so they should be getting more than the students who are still currently in higher education who paid £3,000 should be getting more. But what I think we need to be looking at is student expectations of higher education. I don't think that the higher education system as it currently stands is perfect. I think we need to be addressing contact hours, we need to be addressing study spaces, and we need to be ensuring that when they go into the higher education system, they know exactly what they're getting, particularly around additional course costs and things like that. But with regards to whether my policies address it specifically, no, but it's definitely on my agenda.
Okay, brilliant. Ed?
Okay, so my policies don't directly affect like trying to campaign for fees to go down. I'm not sure whether that's not really something that's feasible within a year of being president. I'm happy to support Vice President Education in campaigning against any further rise in tuition fees. I think that's very, very important because it is something that various people around the country are considering. But I think it's quite important for us to focus on ensuring that students get the value, and it's a buzzword, but the value for money, and there's no easier way of putting it so that people understand what you mean, but then you have to follow it up with how you're actually going to achieve that. So I think it's very possible to get all students on side to lobby the university quite convincingly for a higher block grant. It's a very simple thing to do, and it's a key aspect of students when they come to university is what their students' union is like. And if we can't properly support societies and the work that they're doing, a major factor in a lot of students' time at university, then that's going to affect the university's reputation across the country. So I think it's very important that we work with that. I also experienced from switching course that when I started with a year of people who were at £3,000 a year, and I've moved course and I'm now in a year group where they're paying £9,000 a year. And there's no difference whatsoever in the amount of time or effort that's been put into their education, into what I got when I was in the year where they were paying £3,000. And I do think there has to be some change to recognise the increased contribution that they're paying into the system.
Thank you. George?
Firstly, I'd like to start off that the Guild already has policy on fighting against increasing fees further, and I will ensure that we carry on with this as an officer team and as a Guild and as an institution itself. I think one of my policies does directly mention this in terms of raising awareness. I want to start telling students why they might have pulled up the fees, why it's wrong, and we need to start talking about it again because I think it's just gotten lost now. I think students really need to start talking about it again, why it's been a problem and stuff like that. I think there's also problems attached to it, such as the selling off of the student loan book. Will that happen in the future for the £9,000 fees and other related changes that might be happening to the higher education system? But again, like the buzzwords Ed was saying, like the value and experience, I think that's one of the things we have to focus on in terms of, is it worth the £9,000 fees that we've got currently at the moment and potentially the further fees that might be coming across. So we need to start going out there and engaging students to see what they think about these fee increases and if they think it's affecting them. But the Guild already has policy, and I will make sure we stick to that.
Okay, brilliant. So we've heard from all candidates. Do any of the candidates wish to challenge another candidate's answer? Poppy?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Ed, you spoke about you're in a year group now where you're paying £3,000 and other students paying £9,000, and you think that there should be a difference. Do you think that then that those students should receive 3 times more contact hours than you, or just because in my opinion there shouldn't be a difference, that everyone should receive. I would say that they should receive a higher standard of education, but everyone should be the same. I don't think students who pay £3,000 should be disadvantaged from the students who pay £9,000.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the other students in my year should receive 3 times as much as me. I think my transferring course is a bit of a flaw in the system, because if you started before, then you carry on the same fees because you've not changed university. But what I'm saying is that if universities are getting increased, so students are going to university, they're paying more money to go, then we need to be focusing on making sure that universities are providing a higher standard of education, more opportunities, making sure that what they're delivering is of the best standard possible. And at the moment it isn't, because we've got overloaded courses with too many people on them.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to challenge another candidate?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Chancellor Sainsbury again, or is that against the rules?
Yep, that's fine.
It was pointed out by the sitting president that people aren't actually paying any more. They're paying the same amount. Well, the funds available for each individual are the same because the subsidies are gone, which is why people pay more. But the actual funds allocated to each individual have remained constant. Thus, it makes sense for the amount of supply given to each individual to remain constant.
The amount of money each person is expected to pay in their tuition fees has trebled. That is a fact. Whether they pay it back or not, that's to do with how sustainable the system is.
No, I think
and it's not
the point was that it was you get that the university still
receives the same amount of money
per student. I think that was
yes,
the point.
but the university's also lobbied for that money to go directly to them rather than through the government. And so if they're going to do that and make the students take on that money, especially as some students pay their fees up front rather than going through the loan system, we should see the university making more effort. And even if we weren't paying higher fees, the university should still continuously be updating and making sure that the education they're giving us is constantly improving. I mean, whether we have fees or not, there is a strong argument for saying that universities, if they want to be like the best in the country, then they should make sure that they're continuously improving the experience they're giving their students.
Thank you. Do any other candidates have any other challenges at all? So we shall move on to question 2. Are sabbatical officers paid too much at £17.5 thousand a year? And should sabbatical officers get 2 free fab tickets each week? Also, if you are lucky enough to get elected for president, will you be accepting any of those 2 fab tickets in any week? So we shall go first with Max.
Well, seeing as £17,000 a year is not only below the average income of the country, it's a pretty good wage for a university student living in a university area. I'd say they're paid about enough, particularly when you consider what it is after tax and so forth. If you want people to be able to do a proper job, they have to not have to worry about a second job or about money issues or about when are they going to pay back the loans they have to take out to stay alive. You want proper sabbatical officers, you have to pay them. As for the fab tickets, it's a meaningless perk of the job. 2 tickets a week. I don't know, I might take up on some of them. Who cares? I mean, come on. Let's talk about some serious issues, if there are any serious issues within this organization. So, are they paid too much? No, they're probably paid enough. People are usually paid what they can afford to be paid. Could they be paid less? Yes, if you like suffering. Could they be paid more? Yes, if you had more money. So it's a senseless question. Nobody sets pay through some magical system where money appears out of a fountain and they get some handful of it that they manage to grab, which is also a similar argument, by the way, that can be applied to David Eastwood's salary. Jealousy is not a reason to begrudge people anything. It's just childish.
Okay,
so in answer to the question, I think they're paid about the right amount.
Thank you. Poppy?
I'm going to seem really petty now, but point of clarification, it's 17 for 13 months. So for the 12 months, it's 15 and a half. But that's not really the question, but I thought you all should know that information. It's comparable to what every other staff student union is paid in the country. My own experience is that the level of responsibility, the level of pressure, the level of work that's been put on me this year, I certainly did not run for the position for the salary. I ran because I care and I'm passionate and I wanted to make change. I probably still would have ran for it if it was less. As for the fab tickets, I think I've been to fab twice since being president. Didn't expect to be questioned on fab, to be honest. And I would not have no problem paying for fab at all. I think that's about it.
Okay. Ed?
Yeah, I wouldn't want people to be put off from running to be a sabbatical officer based on like their concerns about financial issues during their year, because I want them to be completely focused on doing the job at hand. So to an extent, I think it's like reasonable to have that salary. It's not like extortionate, but I'm not doing that, like I'm not running for president because it's a salaried role. If it was a volunteer role, I'd probably still be running for it. I'm running because I want to be involved with the Guild and helping the Guild move forward over the next year. With regards to like the fab tickets, I pay for fab tickets quite consistently during the year. If I'm earning a salary, I don't think that's going to make a very big difference at all to me next year. I'm quite happy to pay for them every time and pay for someone else to come with me as well. So the two, yeah.
Okay. George?
My answers are going to be rather direct. I'm not going to have that much of an explanation because I think it's a bit of a no-brainer for me. I think the pay is correct. I think, again, it's in line with other sabbatical positions, and I will be paying for my tickets. I don't think why I have an extra right compared to other students to not pay for the services this Guild provides.
Okay. Ben.
Thank you. I think it's an incredibly trivial issue. I think sabbatical officers shouldn't be paid. They should live in the attic of the guild, like monks. They should be given small amounts of food to subsist, so that we're not ripping anyone off with our vapid silliness. I also think that if you really want to care particularly about the pay of officers, you should look at how much the senior management team at this guild gets paid in comparison to everything else. You will not have any choice about that. They're incredibly top heavy, and I would invite everyone who watches this to go speak to people about how much they get behind your backs. Now, everything else about like SAB tickets. Oh, like why would anyone care if I've got like an extra free £10? Like, I'm sorry to the person who asked this question. I know it's important you make sure there isn't corruption and scrutiny, etc. within these positions. However, I would keep the tickets personally so I could sign them and give them to people and hopefully make a small amount of money back for all the tedium I have to put up with. Thank you.
Okay. Do any candidates wish to challenge another's answer? Poppy?
I was just to Ben, actually, and it's a challenge possibly to other answers you've given to questions. I guess as the incumbent president, I'm finding it quite difficult to take a lot of the rhetoric that you're putting out at the minute. For someone who has worked very hard over the last 7 months to try and achieve change, I've given a huge amount to the Guild. I kind of just wondered why you don't see any value in that work that I've put in over the last 7 months, and what you hope to gain from the sort of image you're putting out there.
Okay, thank you. Ben?
Thank you. I greatly appreciated the work you put in when you first started at the Guild. I actually thought it was great. I thought you did loads for like women and like for people from like oppressed backgrounds when you first started. As it went on, from my perspective, it seems like you were increasingly battered by the senior management team, which I saw. Now, I don't know if that's true. I can't speak on your behalf, and I'm not going to expect you to comment on that because that's unfair and it could interfere with your working relationship with people. However, I hate the fact that I see officers come in here, get more and more stressed out and miserable, and leave more defensive and more unhappy than when they came in. This was supposed to be a place
Thank
which
you,
I
Ben.
believed.
Thank you,
Sorry.
So are there any other challenges from any other candidates? No?
A real question.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, we'll move on to hopefully what you consider a real question now. 3. Would you want a career in politics after being president of the Guild? I believe, Poppy, it's your turn to start.
My career, my degree was law. I'd quite like to pursue a career in law. If anyone's watching who wants to offer me a training contract, I got a 2-1 and I did lots of other extracurricular. I'm a very well-rounded individual. I'm committed. I would like to sell my soul to the corporate world, I suppose. But no, in short.
Okay. Ed.
No. I'd much rather be working abroad, travelling. Yeah, basically I'm interested in the Guild. It's given a lot to me, so I'd like to be involved in helping move forward over the next year. And I think I'm the right person to do that. That's why I'm running, but I don't plan to go into politics in the UK or like anywhere really. I'd much rather be travelling and like working with charities and having fun really.
Brilliant. George?
Currently, no, because I don't think I want to be president because I want to get into politics in the future. I'm an archaeology student. I like to dig a load of holes, I suppose, and find old ancient artefacts. For less pay than the subs get, I suppose. Again, I can't rule it out now because in the future there might be a party I really believe in or an issue I really want to fight. That could be way, way in the future, but I'm not thinking about that now. I'm focusing on this and on my studies. And a career after this, probably just working in the bar.
Brilliant. Okay, Ben?
Thank you. Yeah, it'd be great. I could just keep doing this. Talk absolute crap for ages at people and not actually achieve or do anything. It's just exactly what politics means to us nowadays. I studied voter engagement for my dissertation because I wanted to find out precisely the reasons why people aren't voting anymore. No one votes in, hardly anyone votes in these elections. The turnout is declining across most of the developed Western world. And why is that? Because the people you elect are unable to actually do anything. This is the same here as well. So I'd be quite happy to sit there and ridicule that entire system if these self-important, pompous people go out there and tell you how great they are while achieving absolutely nothing that you want. I think it would be fantastic. I'd get a lot of money for it, and I could hopefully completely destabilise that whole process. I think it'd be brilliant. So yes, absolutely. Give me a job in politics, please. Labour Party this way. Yeah.
Thank you. Max?
I can imagine no greater purgatory than a job in politics. And in fact, if I don't get this job, I'll go to a better paid, more interesting, more fun job somewhere else instead. If I do get this job, however, I would like to actually do some good, and I'll defer my time at Sandhurst. Well, there has been a rumour going around that I wouldn't do the job, and I'd just bugger off to Sandhurst. That's a filthy lie. You heard it here first. Yeah, no. Would I want a career in politics? No, I'd like a career in the military, and I've got that career in the military lined up. And I'm doing this as sort of self-sacrificial. Why am I doing this? Christ of faith. Yeah. Short answer, no. Long answer, God no. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, I can't imagine you'd want to challenge someone else's aspiration, but does anyone want to? No. Brilliant. Okay, so our fourth question of the night. Of the departments in the Guild, for example, entertainments, the ARC, SHAC, student development, student voice, which in your opinion is the most effective and which is the least effective? So Ed, I believe that we're starting with you.
Okay, I think one of the most effective departments in the Guild is student development. They support so many societies, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved with quite a few of them and have a lot of fun doing that. And I think it's actually one of our greatest assets as a union for engaging with students. With regards to the worst, not necessarily worst, but maybe the least effective was the question was about how effective. I think we do have a problem with regards to communication, and I think that needs to change. And I think part of that responsibility lies with the officers going out and actually kind of spearheading attempts at communication and getting whatever message the Guild wants to reach students with, whether it's things that have been gained from the university, things that are coming up, such as events, whether it's democracy events like Guild Council or various other events that the Guild organises. I think one of our big drawbacks is how we actually communicate and reach out to students and get them involved with the things we're doing, because quite often hardly anyone turns up to things. I mean, there's been officer question times where I was the only person there, so then just asked every officer a question just so that they hadn't wasted their time attending it. But there should be more people attending these things, and I think we really need to work on actually talking to students, and in some cases it's probably going to have to be the officers going out door knocking and speaking to students face to face, so we actually know that they've heard that message.
Thank you. George?
I think how effective a department is on a student-by-student basis. Not everyone gets involved in a society or a student group, so a student might not be that effective for that student. However, someone who's been involved in the crimes that have happened recently on Tiverton Road, they might find that the ARC is the most effective department for them. So I don't think it's right for me to say how effective it is for the general population of the students. However, I do agree with the fact that I think the least effective, in my opinion, is in terms of communication and the marketing out to students. I don't think there's anything really innovative. I think it's just the same old emails that people think of as spam, perhaps sometimes. So I think that can be greatly improved, and that all students will agree with that. That's my answer.
Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, quite a lot of these departments are fairly underfunded. The Guild, from what I understand, is having problems with its money. It needs to start making money, so it needs to start getting its events sorted out. It needs to make students want to spend money here so that the Guild can actually provide the services it's supposed to be doing, because the university is continually using the threat of cutting the block grant in order to get its way within the tied-up management structures. Now, personally, I think SHAC is a fantastic organisation. I think people come forth in their thousands with outpourings of happiness and joy over how effective SHAC has been at helping them get great landlords at low prices, which I think is what people kind of envisioned. This is not to say that the staff at SHAC are particularly terrible. I just think as an organisational process, I think actually people are just filled with joy. They can walk forwards, hearts safe and well, in knowledge that they can have somewhere nice to live. Otherwise, to be honest, I don't know. Everyone has different things that they care about. I mean, student development's pretty good. They've got lots of societies and things, and they give you money. They make you fill out paperwork and stuff, but I don't know really. I think they should give more money to marketing, because no one knows what goes on here at all, or even cares. That should be the main priority, and then start making money from events.
Thank you. Maximilian?
Well, it's difficult to quantify effective. As George said, it depends from student to student, but I've never really agreed with that kind of argument. You can look at things objectively. It's a simple process. I haven't seen the books, though, so I'm looking forward to Poppy's answer, because she has. But effective StuDev, probably, because they do a lot of work with not a lot of stuff, but no one's got a lot of stuff. Most effective, I can't really say. StuDev probably is up there. They do a lot of work, and they're one of my main priorities if I were to get this job, this godforsaken job. StuDev, because the societies are the main part of the guild, are the most important part of the guild. But otherwise, least effective is easy. It's whoever chooses the menu at Joe's. Because that thing hasn't changed since I got here, and we never seem to have any proper beer. It's all lager and Guinness. So that's what I'd like to see change. This is a personal thing. More ale at Joe's. Yeah, let's go. So effectiveness can be measured. I don't know what the measurements are.
Thank you. Poppy?
Yeah, I would just like to say, probably with the benefit of knowledge and experience, is that behind all these departments that you're all criticising are very hard-working staff, and not just full-time staff, student staff. So can you please remember that when you're giving your answers, that of course run for these positions because you want to deliver change, but don't just criticise it for the sake of it. Moving on to my answer to the question, I think effective, how you define effective, I actually would like to echo what George says. I think that if one student accesses one service and feels a benefit from that, then that's effective. And that's the only answer to give to that.
Okay. Do any candidates wish to challenge? Ben?
Yeah, Poppy. In no way, I think, is anyone here criticising the staff. Like, the staff are the only worthwhile thing in this building, basically. I love the staff. They've made this whole process a pleasure. And, like, my challenge would be kind of, why did you think it would be that if you challenge a department that might not be operating as well as it could be, would be somehow representative of the people who work there, rather than the power structures, which mean they operate ineffectively?
Okay, Poppy?
Because it seems to me like certain candidates are making a mockery out of certain services that the Guild offers, and I think that a lot of, the majority of the staff that work here, the ones that I speak to on a day-to-day basis, they're very passionate about working at the Guild, and they're very proud to work at the Guild, and they invest a huge amount into their departments, and I think that I'm finding it quite uncomfortable, actually, because with the knowledge of the staff that work in those departments, I think that there's no real criticism of the services. It's actually it's a rubbish service, and it's just, let's get it out.
Ed, you have a challenge?
Yeah, just like to ask Poppy, do you not agree that saying that a department's not effective doesn't mean that the staff aren't effective, but maybe they don't have the resources? For example, the Democratic Structures Review said that non-SAPs were effective, but the answer was to just get rid of them. Like, surely we should, if there's a department that's not very effective, surely we should be giving them more resources or the things they need to actually carry out the job to a more effective extent, so that they actually achieving the goals for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree that there are departments in the Guild that that could be better funded, they could be better resourced, better staffed. But I think that this will probably come out of the strategic review, is that we need to be reviewing the services that we're offering, and not just the answer to providing better services isn't just to throw more money at something. We need to be looking at the service that it provides and whether there is a need for that in a student union, and whether there's a value behind it.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. Are there any other challenges from any other candidates? No? Okay, well, we'll move on to the next question then. George will answer this first. What is more effective in changing university policy? Sorry, I'll start that again. What is more effective in changing university policy? Protest or discussion?
I don't think it can be put down as an either or. I think the first and foremost thing should be discussion, always. I think that is always the most effective way of doing things, because it sounds really petty, but it saves time in terms of if we can discuss and talk and get the problems and issues solved before we have to resort to things like protest, we can focus on all the other things as well, which the Guild has to focus on. But I do think protest is very important. I think the freedom of speech and the freedom to protest is very important. And I think if discussions aren't going well, discussions can't take place, I think I'd like to see more Guild protests and Guild basically organised events to protest against and mobilise students against certain university policy.
Okay, Ben?
I think it depends on the context which you're in. Like, some countries have managed to completely reverse tuition fees by completely protesting. Some countries have managed to reverse tuition fees by lobbying the government and having effective democratic structures in place. The problem is here, we have neither a very well organised mass movement to challenge the government, nor do we have very good democratic structures in place within our government to actually challenge this policy, so we're essentially powerless. Now, I think the only way to get around this, unfortunately, will be to have protests, and there need to be protests that work, not protests which are completely ignored and fenced off. I've taken part in a number of protests, and they tend to get driven around in circles. I went to an NHS protest recently. You walk in a big circle, then you go home, and then nothing changes, which seems to be the general thing with political engagement. So I'm not entirely sure what the best action is to take. I'd prefer if people could speak and work out these issues, but they're not going to, because the university here wants our money, and it wants lots of it. So yeah, I think protest, unfortunately, in our situation, is probably the best way to go about things.
Thank you. Maximilian?
Well, it's a very easy question for me to answer. Not as easy as a politics one, but the answer is there will be no change through protest. And I study war, I'm a student of war, and I've got my own philosophy, but I'll never tell you that violence does not solve problems. It does, but you need a lot of violence and you need to actually kill some people. And I don't think anybody here would support that in the name of the stuff that is going on. I do not support that. It's that simple, because 300 people protesting in the university, the police turn up, they shut it down. It'll happen, it'll shut down. The only reason the university will give us anything is because they think it's a good idea to give us something and because they like what we're doing with it. As soon as you start prodding the bear, it'll just turn around and ignore you. And that is what can happen to this guild. It can be ignored quite categorically. So the only way that we can get things changed is by discussion, but not by discussion, by negotiation, because everything in this world is negotiable, but there has to be give and take. I think one of the main things I've been hearing through all the positions and all the hustings and the debates and so forth is we can lobby for this stuff. Lobbying for this stuff usually means we'll get it for free. No, there has to be give and take, and there has to be discussion, because we can't bring enough violence to bear, and violence doesn't solve problems very well anyway.
Thank you. Poppy?
I think there's a place for both. I think that both are effective methods of not only raising awareness of an issue, but seeing change happen. I think that in the context of higher education and student unions, both are a good method for engaging debate with students, particularly with demonstrations. It's a good way of raising awareness, because that's not something, as everyone seems to agree on, the Guild isn't very good at communicating and raising awareness. But I have witnessed firsthand this year how being in meetings has seen positive change. I've been in meetings where accommodation fees have been lowered, that fee waivers have been scrapped, that we've got printer credits for undergraduate students. So, yep, there's a place for both, and both are legitimate.
Thank you. Ed?
We tend to always think about this in kind of a binary sense, that it's one or the other, but really there's a spectrum. So you start off with the discussions, and then eventually, if there's literally no leeway or no, like, the other side, so in this case the university, are not listening, then yes, there's a place for, like, protest or direct action. It's a bit of a weird situation, I guess, with our students' union, because every year the SABs change, and so there's no continuity. And I think, in a sense, that gives the university a slight upper hand, because they can catch SABs offhand when they go into office. And I think quite an important thing is for the new SAB team, when they get in, and with the non-SABs as well, like the officer team as a whole, when they get in, to be, like, straight on it and aware of the issues, so the university can't catch them off guard, because I think that is a problem that can happen, and the university can take advantage of that because there isn't the continuity.
Thank you. Right, so that's all of the candidates finished, I
I
believe?
have a challenge.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, go ahead with your challenge.
Jumping in on you there, sorry.
Don't worry about it.
I have a challenge for Mr. Pusta. Which countries?
Chile and Quebec. Well, it's not really a country, but a region of Canada.
Okay, so Chile and Quebec, there we go.
Okay. Any other, Bobby?
This is a bit mean, but were you saying then, Ed, that by an officer being re-elected, it would give the Guild a certain upper hand and continuity in terms of issues with the university?
Quite clever, but no. Basically, what I'm saying is that quite a key part of the relationship between and when we're trying to discuss these things and trying to get these negotiations with the university is that you have to have that strong leadership. But if the leadership changes not only from like people but also from ideas, and the team has different ideas each year or don't agree consistently, then that gives the university stuff to play off, because they can say, oh well, last year like this is what happened, or this year this is what happened, or they can just refuse to talk to you. And I think also to an extent, sorry. Okay.
Brilliant. Ben?
Yeah, I have a challenge for Maximilian. So last year there was the university was attempting to make redundant or change the terms of employment and various other generally bad things of staff at the university. A lot of this was to do with the proposed 24-hour library opening times or other areas as well, where they wanted people to be very flexible. Part of the objection to this was a threat by the group Defend Education to call a national demonstration if they, on the open day of the university, and the university backed down, gave in concessions and prevented a variety of job losses.
Throw in the question.
Sorry, yes. So if you feel this is ineffective, how do you feel most policy change is driven, considering it's normally under the threat?
Thank you.
Of Hollywood?
Brilliant.
Okay, no, I understand the question. It's a good question. We have an example of when this worked. Well, did it? I think you'd have to put a lot of stuff in front of me to convince me that the protest or the threat of protest was the factor that changed things in favor. And potentially in this case it was. But can you make that threat all the time? Probably not. For the rest of the time, it's not going to work. One exception does not make something go out the window. And yes, violence does sometimes solve problems, but it doesn't solve them very well. Negotiation is the way most things get done.
Thank you. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I have a challenge for Ed. You described it, but it should be a spectrum, whether you are having discussions or having a protest. I don't quite understand what you mean by a spectrum. You then went on to say that you talk, and if that failed, you protest. That doesn't sound like a spectrum to me. I'd like to hear an explanation of what you mean by spectrum.
Spectrum might be the wrong word. Maybe it's a process. That's probably a better word. You start with discussion. Then if discussion doesn't work, you go and get support for your idea. So one of the things the Guild's very bad at is going to students and saying, look, we've tried to do this with the university. They're saying that we can't do this, or they're refusing to talk to us. Can we see some support? Can we get a petition? Like we did a petition for the local council that VPHC has organised. Why don't we do stuff to do with that with the Guild? So it's like peaceful action, but it's not protesting. It's making a point to the university before you then potentially go onto the stage where you're actually taking direct action and protesting, whether like in Mermaid Square or whatever.
We're drawing to a close, not completely. I've been told by my producers in my ear that we only have time for one more question. Could we push it to 2 producers in my ear so that, I don't know, I have no other way with communicating with you, but I just want to get everyone who's pre-submitted a question to be able to get it in. We can do 2, it's great. So the final 2 questions. What do presidents have to offer liberation groups? So Ben, I believe it's your turn to go first.
Interesting. Because this is something I actually think the Guild does quite effectively and I think needs to be considered carefully. I think generally the best thing the president can do is offer like unconditional support and guidance and every other resource they can for people from those oppressed groups who actually need it. They need to be engaged and shown that they're listened to and that their concerns are actually brought into the policy-making process of the Guild. The president should therefore be completely advised by those things, not try to lobby them or tell them what to do, not try to disempower them by reducing their influence over the Students' Union, and essentially ensure that people from those different liberation groups are actually feeling like they are being taken seriously and not just marginalised in a small corner of a room with tokenistic actions taken. I think it's very important and I think the president should completely listen to them.
Okay. Max.
Yes, the president is sitting at the conflux of a lot of different forces and a lot of different stuff going on within the university, within the Guild, within everything. And the liberation groups are part of that. I think the most important thing a president can offer is a stable environment and an impartial ear. There's a phrase to say quickly. The stable environment, by making sure that the Guild runs effectively, that its day-to-day business is steady, that people know where they stand, and that all the cogs are whirring in time. Any liberation group can go about its own business in an effective and easy way. As for the impartial ear, I don't belong to any liberation group. I mean, look at me. I'll accept that. But I will not accept the statement that I cannot listen and learn from people in minorities and oppressed groups. And an impartial ear will enable the liberation groups to educate not just the president, but also all the members of the society and on campus, and to go about, without being repressed from the top, because that would probably be the worst thing that could happen, by allowing them freedom of movement and freedom of action within a stable Guild. Of course, the resource issue also comes down to liberation officers, the other VPs, because they cut into these things, welfare particularly, and so forth. But stability and impartiality is what a president can offer.
Thank you. Poppy?
I think fundamentally, what not just the president, but the officers, the Guild, and is it offer? Was that the
What can they
wording of-
offer liberation groups?
Yeah, I think that fundamentally what they have to offer is liberation autonomy. I don't think that a president or any officer should be dictating to any liberation group how they should be campaigning, how they should be feeling, how they should be acting. So that's fundamental. It should be at the core of everything that we do. And also unequivocal support. I think that the resource issue, again, feeds into this. And I have tried as much as I can this year, along with other officers, to offer that support, particularly around campaigns and promoting those campaigns and attending events. And I think that it's about taking everybody on a journey. I'd like to see more students coming to events to learn about these things. Yeah.
Okay. Ed?
Well, I define with a few liberation groups, and I never got involved with them. And I respect quite highly the people who do get involved with them and like publicly kind of take on that role, fighting for those like beliefs and causes and trying to educate the rest of the student population. And I think it's quite important that the Guild offers like a very strong platform for those liberation groups to take their message wider to the wider student body, because I didn't know about the liberation groups until I got involved with the Guild through other ways. And I think it's quite important for them to be able to reach out to more people. For some of my friends, there's a suspicion that there's kind of cliquey and so on. But the biggest thing the Guild can offer is to help more people come into contact with them and let the liberation groups like spread their message. But yeah, I'd be wholeheartedly supporting the liberation non-SABs as much as I possibly can to help them spread their message and get more people involved to help them spread awareness of the issues that face a lot of students in our student community on a day-to-day basis.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. George?
Yep. I would, like similarly to other candidates, offer full support. I do believe that they should be as autonomous as they want to be. When it comes down to the liberation officers themselves, and I think of this as all other officers, if I were to win, I'd say that the other officers' manifesto points are mine, in the sense that I won't claim them as my own, but I do believe it would be my job to help other officers with their manifesto points and to help them with the resources and the funding and stuff like that, and my time as well to achieve their manifesto points. And I will be the first to stick my hand up and say that before university I was ignorant to these issues. I did not know about them, I did not know how important they were, and the Guild was fundamental in part of my educational experience on these issues. And I'd like to see that be spread out more in the raising awareness manifesto point I mentioned, and letting students know why these issues are so important. And I think that's what the Guild can offer and the President can offer.
Okay. I believe, Ben, you haven't spoken yet, have you?
No, I spoke at the beginning.
Did you speak at the beginning? My bad.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Okay, so challenges. Does anyone, Poppy, have a challenge?
Yeah, I was quite interested, Max, considering in your Guild TV video, the first policy you speak about is combining the liberation officers into equality. I think I stopped watching at this point. Equality and something. I just wondered why that didn't feature in the 90 seconds you had to speak specifically about this issue, and if you could maybe elaborate on why you think that's an answer.
Well, the point is, the liberation officers are boxed off and isolated within the larger guild structure by the fact that they are individuals. Liberation groups, I think, are the answer to the liberation issues. And by moving more power and the resources that liberation officers have and the powers they have into the liberation groups, we can actually increase the efficiency and the power that each liberation group has. And I think it would give them a much stronger position than a single liberation officer almost floating in a vacuum.
Thank you. Is there Ed?
Well, as someone who's not got involved with liberation groups, but has wanted to talk to someone about an issue, I'd been personally much more comfortable going and speaking to one person who's a non-SAB for that particular issue than having to go and be involved with a committee or a group where then potentially there's a wider awareness and you can't just talk to one person. There's no kind of privacy to that element. And you then have to go talk to a committee of people or something if you wanted to do something or wanted to talk about an issue to find the right person. Whereas having a non-SAB, surely that's better for students to be able to access someone directly.
Thank you. Is that aimed to Maximilian?
Yeah.
Okay, I take that on board and I'll think about that because that's the point. You've got to listen and think. But the way I envisioned it was that the presidents of these societies, which are elected by a more direct action than a guild-wide, than a university-wide guild-based election, would effectively become the liberation officers only with the support of a full-time committee behind them. And so you'd be able to speak to them personally. However, I do take that on board, and I'd have to rethink the policy side.
Okay, anyone else? Ben?
Yeah, it's a good question, Max. Why one officer? How are you going to have are you going to get a kind of black, disabled, lesbian woman to sit in that role to fulfill all the representation that those people need in order to actually see themselves in the guild and participate in what goes on?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, actually. But I think this is the core of the issue, is that the idea that no one can be open-minded enough to take on board the points made for things that have to happen, because this is the point. It's not about the individual fighting for their rights, that's fine. It's about organizing events, because the guild is there to make the events happen. And a single individual would be in a better position to coordinate things like seminars, events, and so forth, and also to avoid conflicts of resources and of times.
Thank you. Are there any other? I think it's only Max and George that can, if they want. No? Okay, so our final question of the night is, how do you think the guild should be represented on a national student political stage? And how does that link into our affiliation with the NUS? So I believe that it is Max's turn to start.
Represented on a national stage and
So I'll repeat the question. How do you think the guild should be represented on a national student political stage, and how does that link to our affiliation with the NUS?
Well, fundamentally, I think the problem is that this question makes an assumption that we are a political organization in the way it's understood in Westminster, that we fight for a particular ideology and that we believe the world should be in a certain way. No, we represent the students and the students' interests, and student interests are pretty obvious. We would like fees to stay down, we would like less regulation and control of how we are taught and what we are taught, and we would like the freedom to be students in our own time, in our own country. And that is how we should represent ourselves. And as a student organization on a national stage, if you want to lobby for lower fees, we should be lobbying either directly to Parliament or through the NUS, which is the larger union of students, although it's much too political for my likes, in order to achieve the results that we want to achieve. But this is not a political organization the way in an ideological sense. It's an organization that represents student wants, desires, needs, etc., as the students say that they are. And that's easily done. We go straight to the top, and we state our case, and we fight for it. Well, we argue for it. As for our affiliation with the NUS, I think the NUS is much too political. It's run by a very cliquey left-wing group that sees itself as the ideological banner carriers of the student movement in the country. I think that our affiliation with it has to be done. It's a national union, but I do not like the organisation itself.
Thank you. Poppy.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. I think that how we're represented on the national students' political stage is that we are affiliated to the NUS, and it is the students' union that's affiliated to the NUS, not each individual student. And I think that one of the ways that we could improve that national representation is better engagement in the NUS delegate elections. I think that at the minute the turnout for candidates and also for voting in those is very, very low. And if more students were aware of it, we would be able to submit more policy, would be able to have debate in our own union before taking that to the NUS. I think I agree with our affiliation. I do agree with our affiliation to NUS. I think it's a very valuable thing, particularly for the support that the sabbatical officers get, and also that the support that the union and by virtue of that the students get is really important. Because that's the sort of the national body that we can affiliate to and can represent us. I would be open to other national bodies representing students at the University of Birmingham. But I think fundamentally we need to improve engagement with our NUS delegate elections. And for clarification, NUS delegates are the students that go to national conference, which is happening later on this year.
Thank you. Ed.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. One of my friends is a sabbatical officer at Southampton University Students' Union, and they're not affiliated to NUS. And she has told me on a number of occasions that they find it really annoying because they can't access a lot of the training and resources and so on. There are definite benefits to being part of NUS. In particular, I've been told by people who've been that the liberation training is quite good for the non-sabbatical officers. What I do think is we need to be communicating the relevance of NUS to students at Birmingham, to students here more often, because I've not heard about it for the last 2 years, and it's only once I started trying to find out about it, and some of my friends were delegates last year, they actually became aware of what was involved with it. I also think that it's quite important that I completely forgot what I was going to say. But yeah, it's quite important on a national level for lobbying for policy change and so on. And I think it's better for us to be part of it to influence that policy that's then going to be lobbied on to politicians nationally, rather than being outside of it and then being a much smaller voice when it comes to important issues around education.
Okay, George.
Yep. We should be consistently representing our students directly to the NUS on a regular basis. I think our issues are their issues, another student union's issues is the NUS's issues as well, and I think we can work together to solve these issues. At the moment, if you want to submit a motion to NUS, you have to do this through a democratic way, which is at the moment is Guild Council. I'd like to see this change so that any student can submit a motion, but I think I want there to be an easier way for students to submit NUS motions that all students can vote on. And I think that is the best way that we can represent ourselves in the NUS. And again, I think there should be, as Poppy said, better communication of the NUS delegate results, elections and how important they are, and I think we should be supporting the delegates and getting their points out there and how they should be voting.
Brilliant, thanks. Ben?
Thank you. I ran in this election because I wanted to point out the flaws of organisations claiming to be effective on your behalf and then actually achieving nothing. I think the NUS is the exact example of a completely ineffective organisation which we then send people over to, like some grand tour of the country so they can stay in hotels and eat food and achieve nothing other than to give you a small card which gets you 10% off shops. Thanks NUS, I really needed that extra 70p off my burger. I see absolutely no point in the organisation except for the liberation training which it provides reasonably well from what I've heard from other delegates who have been there. I think personally we should have a referendum at this Guild of Students in order to ensure that people actually make a legitimate case for why we should actually stay in the NUS rather than it passively existing and no one knowing what it does or what it's actually achieving for us. So I think actually we should have a referendum on this. I would probably argue that we leave it because I think it's absolutely vapid and pointless and it's just another careerist stepladder for people to walk their way up to becoming a politician.
Thank you. Do any candidates have challenges? Poppy?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Ben, firstly, where are you buying burgers if you're getting 70p off a £7 burger if it's 10%? And also, Do you think that the campaign group Defend Education are, because you spoke about you ran because you're sick of organisations claiming to represent students and enact change on their behalf, do you think that Defend Education do what you just said they do?
Yeah, firstly, that burger company place, they do quite nice burgers there. Secondly, I don't think Defend Education have ever actually claimed to represent all students. The point of political movements isn't that you go out there and go, I represent everyone, because any political movement that bases itself on the view of the majority, such as things like gay rights, like equality for black people, like giving women the vote, they started off in the minority. The purpose of a political organisation is to actually convince people of the logic of certain arguments, and the way to do that is to gain attention. Now, from what I understand, Defend Education wants to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to do any challenges at all? Last chance? Brilliant. Well, that's the end of our presidential hustings. Let's give the candidates a round of applause. Thank you for coming tonight, audience, and online audience. Thank you for watching. It's been great, hasn't it? We've all learnt a lot. Make sure we vote for someone in the elections. And yeah, watch GTV's election updates next week. I believe Monday. I think it might be all week, or Monday, Wednesday and Friday, who knows. But they're great, and I'm on them even more, so. But thanks, and good night.